Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, and welcome back to Fanalysis, Avatar: The Last Airbender. My name's Callum, this is Evan.
Hello, everyone.
And today, very much definitely totally a week after the last time we did this, we're going to be recording a discussion on the Western Air Temple, episode 12
Might
of
be.
book 3.
I mean, weeks plural is not technically an incorrect statement. A certain amount of weeks have passed.
What did you think of the start of this episode, Evan?
Mhm. Well, we had very much of a cold opening, much like we did to the original start of this season with Team Avatar lamenting some unfortunate events. And this time, though, instead of being on a boat, they're walking through a desert. So, which is understandable considering things certainly didn't go according to plan, as I think we all can recall from that invasion.
Yeah, a bit of down in the dumps as they come out across that open tundra towards the Western Air Temple. One thing I noticed about this was the joke of the fact that they couldn't fly quite so far on Appa because it's
Yeah.
so heavy having all of these people. Might help if Aang took the armor off. Poor Appa is just lummoxing back behind them the
Yeah.
full weight of that gear. And we know it goes away later with that explosion anyway. So it's just slumping
Just
along like,
trouncing
can
through the
someone
desert with
please
actual
take this
armor.
off? Yeah, this poor rocky terrain. But
Yeah, I think armor that would fit a sky bison probably weighs a little bit more than maybe 6 extra people. Just
yeah,
saying.
exactly. Certainly make the difference at any rate. But they arrive at the Western Air Temple, which is a beautiful
Mm.
setting for the next few episodes, to be honest. Very different
Hmm.
from what we've seen before in terms of the verticality or the reverse verticality of the previous Emma temples. Very pretty.
Hmm.
A great setting for the action scenes and sequences that we're going to be having in this environment later on in this episode and following ones as well. I really enjoyed this space. It's kind of unique from the rest of the temples, but also
Hmm.
you can clearly see that there's that shared world, shared architecture, shared heritage that even gets alluded to by a few of the characters later in the episode. So I very much enjoyed
No, I
that.
completely agree. Yeah, no, I think this temple, like you said in particular, I would say is the most architecturally distinct from the temples we had seen up until this point. Even if you just take the like invertedness of it out of it, um, I don't know if it's ever really been confirmed as to like what order in which the temples were built, but I honestly always got the sense that this could potentially have been the oldest out of the four, just because it, even compared to the ones we'd seen at this point, there definitely seems to be a lot more wear and tear. But that could also just because of the locale, higher altitude and all that. But
Yeah,
because of
I
that, you really do get this sense of like just this like ancientness, and it even kind of makes me wonder, like, could this potentially be where their people originated? Because if so, that's a very interesting bit of history.
yeah, I never really thought about it, to be honest, but it definitely gives that kind of feeling, doesn't it? That sensation of the ancient and
Hmm.
the unknown in the way that the others don't quite, particularly because the others are a lot more similar to each other as well. Like they've been built more of a standard
Hmm.
style than this one. So yeah, I can definitely see that.
Hmm.
It's very appealing and distinct from the rest of them, which is what you want for this kind of episode because it's very much a step apart tonally and also in
Hmm.
terms of like the scale of what they're dealing with at this point in the story. You want it to kind of have that unique feel. It also has unique relevance to the character of Zuko as he
Hmm.
arrives himself and is immediately
Yeah.
thrown back into a flashback on the same ledge from when he was first originally chasing the Avatar. We've mentioned it in previous
Yes.
episodes, but this was another example as well of the writers taking stock and remembering the fact that the world they're living in, they've actually kind of tracking the journey because they've just obviously left the Fire Nation and this is the closest temple to the Fire Nation as they're leaving it, which makes sense for why it'll
Hmm.
be Zuko's first stop on his journey to find the Avatar. So I like that that's been tracking since the start of book 3. I mean, for the majority of the show as a whole, to be honest, but particularly book 3, it's been very clear where they've been stopping, where they've been moving through on the space of the map. It's not something they have to
Hmm.
do, but it really does make a difference when you're looking back and kind of analyzing stories like this. It makes the world feel a bit more
Hmm.
real.
And not to like be too much of a downer or anything, but like you can also, since like as you said, this temple is the closest to the Fire Nation out of all four. You could probably assume that this was probably the first one that fell during
Mm.
the purge
Also, easily
of
the
the
easiest
airbending
to
people.
fall as well. There's no doubt about it that this would have
Hmm.
been the easiest to take for them, just from the sheer nature of the design. But yeah, we
Hmm.
get the flashback from Zuko. We get that it's a common theme of the next 3 episodes, but obviously Zuko's journey as a whole as well, where he's sort of lamenting his past and just you see him just actively like, oh god, like, why? What was I like? I think we can all have some empathy for that experience in our lives. Probably not so extreme as Zuko, but yeah, just having that.
Yeah.
Why did I say that? What did I do? Oh, my poor uncle. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
A lot of that's
lamenting just the past decisions. Also, incredibly subtle, but I always love it when shows do this. But like you could audibly hear the difference between Zuko's voice as it is now and him in the flashback, obviously because that was many years ago and he sounds younger. And it just like little tweaks like that are things I really appreciate about the storytelling, because it not only gives a sense of continuity, but just of the scope of Zuko's journey up to this point. He very much started this whole thing, as a pretty young man, all things considered. Not that he's not young now, but even so. So just like little touches like that are things that I really appreciate about this episode. And they even do it a little bit later, when Zuko is doing his like impersonations of notable people in his life with the music, which I'll cover that. We can cover that, but like you notice that whenever he's either impersonating his uncle or impersonating Azula, the track actually switches to their respective themes ever so slightly, and just little story touching elements like that. It really helps you get into his sort of psychology at the time when he is going through this beginning the tail end of his ultimate transformation, so to speak, towards the end.
And pair that with a fantastic voice performance from Dante Basco as well, as always, and it just really sells the moment. You feel there are a few moments later on this particular episodes where it's perhaps not so much the case, but for all the emotional beats outside of action anyway, every single line really kind of kicks you in the gut and makes you feel for him, because at this point he's been through such a journey, and this is the first big step towards the gang side of things, and seeing where it's going to go after a well-deserved lengthy period of struggle. So yeah, we get this is something else that was funny about this episode, which I've obviously been aware of in the past, but never really clocked just how extreme it is. The extras among the gang at this stage are conveniently just shoveled off. Like, okay, you go explore this the air temple while the scene happens, because this happens twice throughout the episode, and the second one in particular is really stark. He's like, oh, I guess we'll go look for Toph. Runs off scene. Toph appears. But yeah, they're off exploring, and something that we get to see from Aang again that we've seen in the past is his immediate kind of burying his head in the sand as he has to make this difficult choice and face up to this challenge he's got to deal with, as he'd already had to in the past. But he doesn't want to join the planning. He wants to run away and pretend he doesn't have to deal with it for the moment. It's kind of a regression for his character, and understandable. But I liked how they kind of brought that back in a bit, because he's basically starting from square one in his mind. He was building himself up to this big moment before this with the eclipse, and now he's got all of the weight and stress of the world on his shoulders all over again, without anyone to back him up on it, in quite the same way. So yeah, it's
and of course they. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
No, I was just saying, like, and of course they really, hammer that in with some of the dialogue in these sequences where Sokka quite literally says, like, the new plan is the old plan.
Yes, exactly.
Because they built up, like you said, they built up that invasion for so long, and they really did bank on that being the final, nail in the coffin for the war. But seeing as that failed, like, they really do have no other option at this point. Like, this is very much, doomsday clock, so to speak.
Or just would have to master all 4 elements and defeat the Fire Lord. It's like, yeah, I'll just get right on that then. That was always so easy to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, it doesn't feel necessarily like a regression that's unrelatable in the sense. Obviously, it's always been a part of Aang's character. Literally, like the series began, or a lot of the impetus for the events that led up to this point was because he did not want to face aspects of his destiny. But at the same time, since the loss, hit their forces just so heavily, it feels not so out of place for someone like him in this situation, because again, that pressure is always been there and is only getting worse at this point, quite literally.
Exactly. And the big kind of question they set themselves on is, how are we going to get him a teacher for firebending?
Yes.
enter Zuko, who
Yeah.
rather awkwardly and hilariously and sadly, and there's a lot of emotions going
Hmm.
on here, very well executed from all the voice actors involved as well, and obviously very well written too.
Hmm.
He kind of interrupts and says, "Hi, I'm here. I'm
Hmm.
good now." You know, he's just trying to sell himself to the team, who are having none of it, understandably, particularly
Yeah.
Katara, for reasons that are immediately made clear here and also reinforced later on in the episode and episodes to follow as well.
Hmm.
There's a kind of mini arc at the end of the season here, that builds quite beautifully to one of our favorite episodes of the entire show later, focused on
Hmm.
Katara and her reaction and response to Zuko's turn, because um, she was the well. It comes back later, but she was the first to
Crossroads of Destiny.
yeah to kind of accept him and raise that question of, okay, maybe there's something more going on here, and was burned for it.
Hmm.
So she
Yeah.
is understandably quite hesitant here, and as are the rest of them to an
Hmm.
extent. And we see
Yeah.
that in this opening scene where they're all questioning whether or not this is something they should explore, and ultimately decide not to. And Zuko is heartbreakingly ejected from the group before he even manages to join,
Yeah.
and sent on his way.
I also like too, though, it's like the way they frame each of the reactions, because obviously their collective experiences with him do vary somewhat. Toph, of
Mm.
course, not being privy to what happened in season one, meaning that her view of Zuko, while obviously negative, is not quite as ingrained as it is with the others in that sense. And we even get a really, somewhat obvious callback, but also I'd say appropriate, where Zuko brings up the fact from season one, after saving Aang from the prison, that he suggested that they had the potential to be friends. Which again is a little on the nose, but at the same time, it's delivered in a way where it doesn't feel like, yeah, like that would be something that could at least be the setting stones for where we everything ends up later in the episode.
Yeah,
So, and
it's in the
again, just
line
I feel
delivery
like
for
I
me.
feel like
It's
that.
the naturalness of it.
Yeah.
It's how he kind of voices the line, says, you once said we could be friends. Just it was very.
Hmm.
It wasn't, here's let me raise this point because I'm trying to win you over
Yeah.
by and the writers have told me to. It's literally just like, do you remember that? I do. I really
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah, I mean, it really was like the first time the two of them, them being obviously Aang and Zuko, were able to have any sort of connection that was not entirely unantagonistic, but at the same time, it's sort of, yeah, obviously, but at the same time, like, that leading to where it is now would be a natural thing to reference. And of course, we also, Zuko, while pitching himself, brings up the fact that he had saved Appa back in
A little
season
tick
two,
box point in
with,
his favor, because Appa is obviously
yeah.
understanding that and recognizing and welcoming, which is a nice little
Hmm.
touch to kind of help smooth things over a bit. I enjoyed that.
And then there's like, yeah, and there's like the obvious symbolism of like animals, even in real life, being able to kind of like be a judge of character in some ways better than humans can at certain points. Again, on the nose, but not in a way that comes off as forced for the sequence. But
Mm.
anyway, yeah, he still ends up getting rejected. But as mentioned before, Toph, being the voice of reason that she really was in this episode. She really
Yeah, a
has
lot
some
of
great
times.
lines in this episode in particular.
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder
And
if I'm the blind one
she
here.
points out the
It's
obvious.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's the one who reaches out. But again, you go back to that whole varying levels of experience. She's the least affected by Zuko of the group. The
Hmm.
rest of them have been harried from start of the journey to now, basically non-stop. Whereas she's had a bit more of a
Hmm.
separation from that, to an extent. So, and also is just that way inclined anyway.
Hmm.
She's a lot more, we need to
Pragmatism.
do this. Yeah, we need to do this. Therefore let's do
Yeah.
it. And she goes to try and see him and speak with him. And I love that this is a nice bridging jump between the obviously stark no, go away, to getting back involved again, and again giving the group a reason to go after him, because
Hmm.
it gives you a glimpse of who Toph is, but also it shows a very natural kind of understanding despite understanding despite the misunderstanding, because she gets burned obviously in his
Hmm.
natural reaction of, oh god, someone's
Right.
coming out from the night in the middle of the night, and we know what
Yeah.
his past is like. But she understands that once she's had
Hmm.
time to cool off and has gotten over the pain and has made her way back, she's like, he didn't mean to, though, to be fair.
Hmm.
And then we got the best,
But
one of my favorite lines of the episode, which is, why am I so bad at being good? It's like,
being
it's
that.
such a
Yes.
great line for Zuko, because he really does kind of sum up his arc.
Understandably. Also, in terms of just the choreography of that little sequence, I like too how it really showcases how, despite Toph being as strong as she is, by the standards of this franchise, the way she uses her bending, especially when facing someone like Zuko, she still has very specific weaknesses. Those being
Mm,
like if you're able to harm her, if you're able to damage her feet, you're essentially, handicapping a lot of her ability to perceive the earth. So despite being such a powerhouse, it kind of showcases how with the right sort of working of elemental balance and skill, she can still be have a lot of issues with a lot of very
mm.
high tier combatants. So again, little touches like that, because obviously having exposed feet against someone who can manipulate fire is going to be a pretty big deal if you actually get hit. So again, it kind of just showcases how not only just the balance in skill, but also how very specific attributes can counter others, even if they don't necessarily, even if they can't necessarily do everything the other can, and vice versa.
In terms of the animation and choreography as well, I particularly loved how Zuko kind of switches straight into kind of fire form as he's jumping
Hmm.
and sidestepping the strikes as they're coming at him. It was very cool touch. It wasn't just a case of let me just dodge to the side. No, I'm actually going to make a move, in response to this.
Yep.
It's keeping into that very important Avatar style, which I think can't be
I
overstated.
think yeah, I'm gonna touch more on this as we get into like later episodes this season, but you could definitely see a gradual evolution in Zuko's fighting style from like this episode onward that I really like, because again, I won't spoil too much on how I feel about it because it kind of spoils a few things in future episodes that we're going to cover, like I said. But let's just say that like the evolution of his fighting style in particular in this half of this season is one that I really admire and like to see and very much appreciate.
Mm.
Also, another thing too is I think I would just be something interesting for us to discuss is when you consider when this was aired. I think a lot of people probably did have it in their heads that that Zuko would be the one to ultimately teach Aang firebending, but I also feel like a lot of people didn't necessarily have that exact expectation, at least a few episodes before the one we're currently covering, obviously because of everything that went on in the eclipse. Because I imagine, and if anyone's watching, they can comment, of course, because I imagine there were probably some people who were also theorizing that like, oh, maybe Iroh would end up being the one to teach Aang
Mm.
fire,
Yeah, I imagine that was
or
most
even
people's
or even
expectation.
something else entirely. Yeah.
Young
So
viewers, at least, who
um,
haven't had the experience of knowing that this
yeah,
is
yeah.
probably the kind of arc that they would writers be going for. Ira would be I
Hmm.
imagine, most young people's guesses. It certainly was for me
Yeah.
way back in the day.
No, I vaguely recall being on a similar boat myself, but even then, like it is the, I would say, natural writing step to
Mm.
integrate Zuko into Team Avatar beyond obviously the general purposes of his redemption arc from a mechanical standpoint.
Yeah, it was definitely a natural choice. I enjoyed, just on the human notes, I enjoyed Sokka's reaction when Toph comes back saying, "I went to see Zuko last night." He's like, "Ugh!" Like, I love the fact that what he's thinking from that line is
Repelled.
like, What the hell?" And everyone's obviously, as we said before, just the varying experiences and reactions to him as a result of it. Aang resolving to go and find Zuko because he clearly can't be left alone out there; it's too
Hmm.
dangerous. Enter Sparky
Yeah.
Sparky Boom Man, who has been absent for a few
Yes,
episodes at
Mr.
this stage.
Combustion.
Well, that's not
Yeah.
his name, but I love that line. The sheer just like, well, I mean, no, but yeah, I love that from before. Anyway, yeah, gives Zuko a chance to redeem himself and prove himself to them. Shows that
Hmm.
he's not he's up on the up and up essentially. It was weird though because I mentioned before about the Dante Basco lines, the delivery. This particular moment on the balcony when he's saying like, he's shouting out to him, it very much sounds like he's putting on a show. Like the whole beat is, oh, you're trying to convince the gang that you're actually trying to save them, but really you're not. It was weird. I'd never really clocked it before, or if I had, I'd forgotten about it
Yeah, the
since.
the line delivery, it was it feels a little, like you said, a little bit awkward. And
Yeah.
although technically, if you actually take it as is, then maybe that's why Combustion Guy didn't stop. He thought
Well,
Zuko
yeah.
was doing a bit.
Yeah, but and obviously, it's going to be weird anyway because you're shouting up at someone who's about to potentially try and kill you. I understand that it wasn't going to be completely
I
naturally
still
delivered,
don't
but
understand why this guy's not in the military.
well, that as well. But the way it's not naturally delivered leaves the wrong impression for me. I'd be interested to see what people think of that if that was something they thought as well. But the action happens. We get the greatest throw of Sokka's life. It's just like gauging it, just like blind throwing it around the corner, knocking out the park. And
probably the best boomerang throw anyone has ever done ever. Which again, it continues to reinforce Sokka's combative ability and how under certain circumstances he can. Very much so. So that's always appreciated. I mean, let's be honest. Like with the amount of momentum that thing had and where it hit him, most people probably would have been knocked out by that.
And that thing's sharp as well. The fact that it bounced off, similar to Katara's ice shards. That guy's got some thick skin. Sparky Boom Man goes boom, and we get the kind of coming down of Zuko and the reuniting of the group again. Where I like one of my favorite things about this is they don't just introduce it. Goes, oh well, you saved our life. I guess you're good now, because a lot of lesser cartoons would have taken that route. And what I liked about this was Aang's kind of latching on to the mention of fire is dangerous as he's apologizing to Toph. Fire is wild and unpredictable, and as a firebender, I need to be aware of that and take responsibility and be more cautious. I loved not only was that a really earnest and pleasant, natural apology to Toph in isolation, but also we know as viewers that this is something that Aang himself has struggled in the past, and that kind of resonance with him makes him, as a spiritual person, reach out and think, oh, I think you're meant to teach me, that this is an appropriate fit. I thought that was a really, really clever way of getting past this isn't just a case of it being convenient because you're a firebender, we need a firebender teacher. It's actually, there's a reason that you specifically, despite all of the potential risks involved that we've discussed earlier in the episode, there's a reason you should be the one teaching me. I really like that.
Yeah, and it's an excellent way to bookend this and lead directly into the following episode, Firebending Masters, which is quite literally all about that. So it kind of, it's not only an excellent setup to those concepts, but like as you said, it sort of makes everything come full circle in a way where you definitely feel like this necessity and this training that they're going to undergo together is ultimately going to benefit both of them, which, as we know, like you said, is ultimately the case. So it basically does everything that a mid-season, opener needs to do, reintroduce the characters, reintroduce the mission, reintroduce the threat, and introduce, the concepts, characters, and ideas that will then be expanded on into the finale. And I think from that functional level, it does everything perfectly. And the fact that obviously Aang, it also showcases that like Aang's willingness is not going to be the be all end all. And he consults every single one of his friends individually. As you mentioned,
deliberately, very particularly. It wasn't just a case of what do you guys think. It was no, I must make this a group choice. I like that. It was a suitably responsible kind of display from Aaron.
Absolutely.
Earlier been a bit more childish.
Very in his character.
We've got both sides of him. He's very responsible and serious when he's in that space, but when he's trying to escape that responsibility, as a child is naturally going to do, you kind of see the opposite sides. This was one of the moments as well. I mentioned at the start that this is kind of a set of episodes where you get real gut punched on behalf of Zuko intentionally. This was one of the worst ones for me, as in worse felt. It was a brilliant moment where he goes, oh, thank you, I won't let you down, and they all immediately just kind of go slumping away and turn on him and leave him that was so painful to watch and so well executed. And I like as well, despite the obviously pain of the moment, he is still resolved. He doesn't let it knock him. He's like, this is a first step, this is good, I can accept the hostility. And we get the awkwardness of Sokka settling him in and saying, this is weird. And we also, again, because we're going on a mini arc journey for this part of the series, we get the first little glimmer of Darth Katara, at least in regards to the Zuko scene. We've seen it before in the series, as we've spoken about before. But she comes up and, openly threatens, not just to react to him should he turn, but actively threatens to kill him in a very particular way that you can get away with in an animated show like this. You won't have to worry about your destiny anymore because it will be ended, permanently. That was a very cool moment, very powerful and very nice setup for the episodes to follow.
I mean, never mind the fact that we literally hear the word "kill" in like the next episode. But yeah,
Yes, of
they
course.
obviously didn't. They didn't want to associate that with her, obviously. So I
Mm,
understand it. But even then, and she looks. The thing is, too, is like with the animation, like you can tell just like she is genuinely serious when she says that. Like her face, like she is actively like, no, this is. This will happen, and if
mm,
you slip up even a little bit, like you definitely feel the resolve, not just in her tone, but just in how she is carrying herself. And the thing is, too, is like Zuko, he looks genuinely like I don't know, like intimidated. Like he
mm.
actually, like you can tell that he believes what she is saying. Which again, coming from someone like him who could have, old Zuko would have just brushed her off, but no, like at this moment, it kind of it's two way. It showcases, like you said, her um, intimidation and the fact that she has not forgiven him, while at the same time showcasing Zuko's ability to understand how serious she is actually being. So again, just little touches like that are fantastic. And
Mm.
after that, she leaves aggressively, slams the door, and then cut to credits. Because whenever you're threatening anyone, you always have to end it with a door slam.
Absolutely, yeah. And
That's just storytelling 101.
I mean, all of that to say you said about the expression and the tone, etc. I mean, the viewer believes it. It's not just Zuko; the viewer
Mm-hmm.
buys it, which is really important, especially for a character like Katara, where you know the kind of mumble bear instincts come out at a certain time, but also she has been personally
Mm-hmm.
affected by Zuko's betrayal, so she doesn't
Mm-hmm.
take that. She doesn't take those kind of things lying down. It's very much in character with her,
Mm-hmm.
and more important than anything else here is it's the setup to this mini arc that's going to come forward. But it's going to be
Yeah.
the kind of the opening section of what's going to come with the Darth Katara episode, which is just delivers
Mm-hmm.
on everything you can want it to. So yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll get to that later. But that kind of settles
Indeed.
the last of this episode. Any closing thoughts?
Like I said, from a structural standpoint, I think this episode does everything it has to do for a mid season opener in terms
Oh,
of
sorry, I didn't
setup
mean to
and
interrupt. I meant to
payoff.
mention
Oh,
this came
sorry.
after a hiatus, correct? This episode, I believe. Am I
I believe
misremembering
so.
that?
Yes.
'Cause I vaguely recall way
Yes, I
back in the
believe
day this was
so.
a hiatus one. I think you might have talked about it before as well. But yeah, so that even more important that it, like you say, it sets up that
Hmm.
that return and kind of goes over the basics for people so they can be caught up.
It does a fantastic job of doing that, and really lead. It's an excellent bridge between now and the finale, and obviously, like you said, after that break, but it also at the same time, I like how it finds a really healthy balance between getting viewers back up to speed on what had happened and also setting up things to come in the future, which is not the easiest thing to do when you only
Mm,
have like 22, 23 minutes. So the fact that it was able to do that just really showcases not only the tightness of the storytelling, but also just how much. I mean, I'm sure, like for this season in particular, there was probably a lot that was cut out ultimately that we never got to see, and the fact that they were able to still make everything so cohesive is fantastic to see. And overall, I'd say it is about as solid of an episode as you can get.
And very strong on the character front as well. It's not just here's the plot points,
Hmm.
here's what we've had happen now, here's what we need to do next. That's touched on, but the main root of this, as with all of the best episodes of Avatar, is in the character and the journey they're going on and what stage they're at and establishing where we're going with them, how we're getting there. It really does tie all that
Hmm.
together for a catch up episode very, very well. With the only
Hmm.
moments of inelegance, as I said before, the whole let's just shuffle the extras over here and get them here because we don't want to do stories with them right now.
Hmm.
We're kind of just tied to them for the
Yeah,
moment, so I enjoyed that.
yeah.
But yeah, very much enjoyed the
Hmm.
episode. Always good to return to Avatar. And looking forward to discussing next
As
time.
we have, yeah.
Yes, look forward to discussing next time the Five Bending Masters.
Hmm.
I am Callan, and I still don't have an outro.
Evan Nova 95. We hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys later.
Goodbye.